What is grief and loss? When you think about the word grief, it is actually a normal process in which we experience loss. So when you think about losing someone who is very important to you, losing something which had a lot of value in your life, then the emotional reaction to that is what we call grief. It is how you are able to move through the loss of something and someone who was very important in your life. Most of us, when you hear the word grief or you hear the word loss, you immediately think about death. However, we have many other losses in life that feel like death, and yet they are not death. So some of the really common losses that we experience in life that really change the way our life is the loss of a loved one, the loss of a job, or even the loss of things that are important to you. Those kinds of losses, they change us in fundamental ways, and our lives are not left the same again. And a very good example that all of us, the whole world, has had to experience lately that has created a loss and grief process for many is the COVID-19, the onset of COVID-19. You can imagine how much that put our lives upside down. I still remember the night that I heard that schools had been closed because of COVID-19. That was a really, strong, there were strong emotions about that. But the emotion I do remember myself, it was the emotion of confusion. So that is a loss of what we knew, of things that were familiar and things that were predictable. And then it created now a crisis, because now what do we do now? Grief is a natural experience that is followed by a loss, and a significant loss in our lives that changes the way we are. Even change in itself, like you are at the office and then there is a new policy, or they change MDs, they change CEOs, and everybody comes with their own culture, their own expectations. That is a loss. It will create a loss for you, and because now you can't predict what's going to happen in the future, and so you experience some sort of grief there because you are trying to adjust to the new thing that has been thrown into your life. For the most part, the experience of loss is usually not something that we are prepared for. And so it is important for us to understand grief and loss. Those experiences are really normal. They are universal. Everyone experiences these emotions, and this is not because it's you. So don't personalize it, but understand that it's a natural occurrence in life, because one of the things that we know about loss, or especially death, is that it's irreversible. And there is nothing as hopeless and helpless as realizing that this thing that has happened, that has caused so much change in me, there is nothing I can do about it. I have no control over it, and that is why death is usually very difficult for us to manage. And so sometimes you find a confusion because of the many, or even what we might call conflicted feelings of loss and relief at the same time. Let me give a good example. Is when you have been taking care of a partner or someone in your family who has had a long illness, for instance, terminal illness, and you've taken care of them. And so, or you might even think that you are ready for them to rest, because daily having to watch them struggle in pain and just know them being there helpless, needing your constant care, you kind of have this conflicting feelings of wanting them to rest, wanting them to be out of their pain, and at the same time not wanting to lose them. And so once a person like that passes on, there are two emotions that we might experience. Is the emotion of loss, and loss I want to talk about that we experience very deep feelings of sadness. And then there is the emotion of relief that your loved one is no longer in pain. Those conflicting emotions can really create emotional and psychological and even mental. And so it will be important for us to normalize this, for us to understand that these feelings, they are normal and they are universal. Now, the other thing that I would like to address, even as we continue on with these videos, is the effect of grief and loss, the grief and loss process, the effect of that on your quality of life, on your mental health, and how that can actually take away the joy of living. And we will be talking more about that. But right now, I want to identify a few emotions that you might experience after the loss of something or someone very important to you. Number one, there is a lot of deep sadness. You just feel the loss, which is the deep sadness that you experience, and it may mimic what we call depression, the symptoms of depression. So you feel you are crying a lot behaviorally, you are crying a lot, you are isolating yourself a lot, you feel alone, as if nobody is able to understand what you're going through. And so that can create now some mental health challenges right there. And then number two, there are feelings of guilt. This is the other emotion that you will be feeling after the loss of someone important or something that is important to you. For instance, if there is something that you thought you could have done or you delayed. I have had a lot of people who say, I feel so guilty because they had called me in the morning or somebody had called me and I postponed it. And then when I was going there, I got a call that my father, my mother, or my significant other has passed on. And so you are left feeling guilty that you didn't do what you should have done. And then the other thing that we experience a lot is anger. Anger can be also a feeling that we have, and even bitterness, depending on how the loss happened. For instance, you are in a job and then there is an unfair something that happens and there is no justice for what it was. And you might be forced to leave the job, or you might be fired unjustly. And so you will have those feelings of anger and bitterness towards those individuals or towards the organization or whatever it might be. So you want to kind of understand that there are these emotions and thoughts that come through this time of grieving and this time of experiencing this loss. So those are some of the issues of mental health that you might find yourself dealing with. Plus, the other thing that I need to also identify here is anxiety. And think about anxiety as a feeling of loss of control, as a feeling of the unknown is not known to me, and I'm afraid that something bad is going to happen again. Anxiety can kick in during this process of grieving because you feel like the thing that you are grieving about happened and you had no control, and now you feel as if your life is entirely out of control, and you feel that you cannot put it together. So you struggle with that. And at this point, this is when people who are people of faith, their faith becomes very important to them. It becomes one of the things that, one of the resources that helps them to be able to manage this process of grieving, grief and loss in a way that they are not completely unable to function. And so we will continue to talk some more about the stages of grief and how to manage each of those stages, plus the types of grief, so that you can be more aware of what is going on with you when you are grieving the loss of someone or something that was very important to you. So until I see you next time, I would want to ask you again to subscribe if you haven't. Share with your friends if this content is helpful to you. And until I see you next time, continue to live by design.